Wang Chong was the first person who had ever dared to say such things. In truth, Consort Taizhen's situation was very poor. Both the Consort Taizhen incident and the Sage Emperor's favor displayed a Consort Taizhen that shone with boundless radiance. But in reality, whether she was in court or in the palace, Consort Taizhen was under a very heavy pressure. In the imperial court, no small number of ministers still objected to her. Many people did not outwardly protest, but they still grumbled in private. Thus, Consort Taizhen had always endeavored to remove herself from court politics so as to avoid the dissatisfaction of those ministers. And in the palace, Consort Taizhen had been suddenly promoted and now almost completely monopolized the Sage Emperor's favor. The Sage Emperor had even been willing to oppose all his ministers for her. The concubines and consorts had already reached their breaking point. If not for their fear of the Sage Emperor, the 3 palaces and 6 courts won. The numerous consorts and concubines would have joined hands to assault her long ago. Consort Taizhen knew this, so in the vast confines of the imperial palace, she spent her time in only the Yezhan Palace, the imperial gardens, and a few other places she sometimes frequented. Otherwise, she did her utmost to keep her distance from all the other consorts and concubines. There was no association and certainly no relationship. The rejection and hostility in the palace were invisible, but Consort Taizhen could clearly feel the enmity rising from the palaces and courts. This topic was one of her taboos. No one had ever dared to say such things in front of her, not even Xianxia. But now Wang Chong had exposed this matter in all its grisly glory. Wang Chong, you've gone too far. Wang Chong's pricking of this pain point had caused Consort Taizhen's expression to freeze into a sheet of ice. Even Xianxiao's expression had morphed, and he was desperately giving Wang Chong looks. This bastard scoundrel, did he go crazy today? Not even he dared to bring up this topic because Consort Taizhen was not only his younger cousin, but also a consort of the palace. Wang Chong's boldness was a little too much. Haha. It seems like I'm thinking too much. Although I came for the sake of the 5th prince, it was also out of consideration for your majesty. Since your majesty believes that this lowly subject is speaking nonsense, Wang Chong will say no more. I've troubled your majesty. Wang Chong bids farewell. Surprisingly, Wang Chong smiled at Consort Taizhen's rage. His expression normal, he clasped his hands and began to retreat out of the hall. Just when Wang Chong was prepared to leave, a voice came from the upper reaches of the hall, ordering Wang Chong to stop. Wait a moment. Halt for this consort. In the upper reaches of the palace, Consort Taizhen's eyes were shifting. Although her expression was still icy, her attitude was now completely different. Wang Chong, since you said that you were also considering this consort in your thoughts, I will give you one chance. Speak. Just how are you thinking about me? If you can't give your reasons, don't blame this consort for being rude. These words were utterly unexpected. Xianxia twisted his head around to glance up at Consort Taizhen, unable to conceal the astonishment in his eyes. But Wang Chong, who had his back to Consort Taizhen, gave a faint smile, his eyes seeming completely unsurprised. Consort Taizhen now had a most esteemed status, and as a consort, she wielded massive authority. But in the end, she was still a woman. Perhaps she had no interest in the 5th prince's affairs, but she was certainly interested in her own. Ha, your majesty! Wang Chong turned around, the emotions in his eyes quickly concealed as he faced Consort Taizhen. Your majesty, do you not think that your current situation is very similar to the 5th prince's? 5th prince suddenly recovered the ability to cultivate and your majesty was promoted to consort. Both of you suddenly rose from negligible positions. Both of you made others feel threatened, and both of you were rejected by others. Wang Chong gazed at the supreme beauty of the great Tang, a leisurely expression on his face. Humph, are these your so-called considerations for this consort? Your words are too far-fetched. This consort sees no reason to put myself at such risk and help the 5th prince, Consort Taizhen said sharply. Her stance toward the war of the princes was unchanged. She would avoid it if she could and keep as far away from it as she could. Wang Chong's arguments were not enough for her to invest so much in the 5th prince. And it wasn't like she had some friendship with the 5th prince. Hee, of course it's not worth it now. But 100 years later, when the new emperor takes the throne, where will your majesty go? Boom! Like a bolt of lightning cleaving down from the heavens, Wang Chong's simple question caused Consort Taizhen and Yang Zhao to pale at the same time. These had been the most impactful words Wang Chong had spoken in this meeting. Wang Chong, you're too bold. Consort Taizhen and Yang Zhao voiced their rebukes at the same time. Even those two cold-faced beauties standing at Consort Taizhen's right and left couldn't help but shed their indifference and look at this youngster. His Majesty and 100 years too. In normal circumstances, one could not even think about such words, much less speak them. Wang Chong's question was tantamount to treason. Bastard! Are you cursing His Majesty? Consort Taizhen's eyes shone with a cold light as a powerful and dreadful energy exploded from her body. Wang Chong does not have this intention. But there is no sovereign in the world that reigns for 100 years, much less an emperor that reigns for 1,000. There has been no exception since ancient times. Taizu and Taizong were also no exception. No matter what, a new emperor is bound to ascend to the throne in the future. Does your majesty believe that when the time comes, you can still maintain your current status? With the sage emperor here, none of the 3 palaces or 6 courts dare to act rashly. But when the new emperor ascends, what does your majesty believe the consorts and concubines of the 3 palaces and 6 courts will do? Wang Chong meant no disrespect. I ask for your majesty to please reconsider. Wang Chong sincerely said. These words left both Consort Taizhen and Yang Zhao very concerned. No matter how treasonous Wang Chong's words were, there was one thing that he was right about. His Majesty was no longer young, and the oldest first prince was 30-some years old. The question of succession was imminent, already a scheduled matter. And it was a question they would also be forced to confront. While the sage emperor was there, others would not dare to act wantonly. But when the new emperor took the throne, everything would be different. Yang Zhao was not guaranteed to be able to preserve his current wealth and status. It was just like how the sage emperor was not guaranteed to be able to protect her. Consort Taizhen had another serious concern. Since ancient times, it had always been the custom for the oldest to succeed, not the youngest, and it was tradition for the kingdom to be passed on to the son of the first wife. Even if she became pregnant with the seed of the dragon, the ministers would never allow her son to be made crown prince. This had always been Consort Taizhen's fear, one that she did not even dare to think about. The two had to admit that Wang Chong's words had struck their weakest and most painful point. Wang Chong, did you know that if I wanted to, I could have you put in the imperial prison right now? Consort Taizhen slowly raised her head and looked at Wang Chong. This was her first time seeing Wang Chong, but in just this one meeting, Wang Chong had already angered her multiple times. And all the things he spoke of were her greatest taboos. In normal circumstances, she would never permit anyone to mention them in front of her. Haha, your majesty, with some things, if Wang Chong doesn't say them, will they no longer happen? Wang Chong asked. Consort Taizhen looked dazed. Wang Chong's words seemed irrefutable. She wanted to be angry, but she couldn't work up any rage. This was because Consort Taizhen knew that though Wang Chong's words were treasonous, they were all true, and were things that she worried could happen. Consort Taizhen even felt that she was borrowing Wang Chong's mouth to voice her innermost worries. Yang Zhao was also rather dazed. He was also bursting with the desire for authority, or else he wouldn't have entered the capital. He actually didn't mind getting involved in some war of the princes, but because Consort Taizhen didn't like anyone mentioning matters of the imperial palace in front of her, he had never brought the matter up. And as time passed, he also began to put the matter aside. The recent wave of success and the criticisms from all sides had made him further forget those matters. But Wang Chong's words had suddenly reminded him. Just like Wang Chong said, there were some things that would appear eventually, even if one didn't concern oneself with them or get involved with them. It would be fine if it were any ordinary matter, but once the war of the princes dragged Consort Taizhen in, this would affect his own future prospects. Yang Zhao suddenly turned his head and spoke to his cousin. Sister, although I also think that the war of the princes is no matter that we can lightly involve ourselves in, the words of my sworn brother are not completely without reason. It's impossible to remain completely uninvolved. Perhaps we really should contemplate this matter and decide what to do after discussion. Let alone consort Taizhen. Even Wang Chong was surprised by these words. Yang Zhao's words were far more effective than his own. After all, these two were cousins and had a much more intimate relationship. These words that had originally been intended to convince consort Taizhen had ended up moving Yang Zhao. A rather surprising harvest. As expected, Yang Zhao's words finally caused the look in consort Taizhen's eyes to change. In the capital of the empire, this older cousin was the one she trusted the most and found most reliable. Brother, the matters of the imperial palace are difficult to describe and discern. They are not things that you can understand, consort Taizhen said. Her stance had clearly softened. Moreover, the harem cannot involve itself in politics. This is the custom. His Majesty also does not like it when the women of the harem stick their hands into too many things. If I meddle too much, His Majesty might not be happy. Besides, I really can't see how helping the fifth prince will improve my situation. Her first few sentences had been aimed at Yang Zhao, but the last one was for Wang Chong. Ha ha ha. At this question, Wang Chong laughed. Your Majesty, do you still not see it? Amongst the princes and the harem, only His Highness the fifth prince and your Majesty are without any supporters and backing. In the palace, not a single person will help him. None of the consorts or concubines from the 3 palaces and 6 courts will back him. In the harem and amongst the princes, your Majesty can only truly pull close to the fifth prince. As long as your Majesty treats the fifth prince well, the fifth prince, as supporterless as he is, will assuredly rely a great deal on your Majesty and will definitely not think about betraying you. Moreover, your Majesty is weak within the palace, and it is difficult to clap with only one hand. If your Majesty has the fifth prince's help, the two of you will present a threat to the other consorts and princes and prevent them from rashly acting. More importantly, if, in the future, the fifth prince ascends to the throne, he will undoubtedly be extremely grateful to your Majesty. Even if your Majesty's status in the future is less than that of the Empress, it won't be by much. Of course, if your Majesty has other plans, is prepared to harbor the dragon's seed and give birth to a true dragon who will one day ascend to the heavens, that is another matter. Treat these words as if Wang Chong had never said them. His head lowered, Wang Chong finished his arguments. Consort Taizhen had been earnestly listening at the beginning, but she couldn't help but giggle at the end, amused by Wang Chong's joke. Little thing, what nonsense are you speaking of? Even if I become pregnant with His Majesty's dragon seed, it will be 18 years until he matures. By that time, the war of the princes will have already been decided. Where did this plan come from? With this laugh from consort Taizhen, that aura of sharpness and power suddenly vanished. That charming smile, like thousands of flowers blooming as one, was so beautiful that even Wang Chong was dumbstruck for a moment. And with this smile, the mood in the hall also warmed. Although consort Taizhen's laugh was bright and clear, Wang Chong could still hear a faint tinge of regret. If one wanted to fight in the light and shadow, and set up roots in the duplicitous confines of the palace, the best method was conceiving a dragon son. But consort Taizhen had just entered the harem. The sage emperor's princes were already mature. Even if she had such ideas, it was already too late. Nothing could change this, and to consort Taizhen it was truly a regret. Wang Chong naturally understood this, so he wisely elected to not continue down this line. Wang Chong, can you tell me why you so highly regard the fifth prince? Consort Taizhen's smile faded as she returned to her normal self. Her bright and beautiful phoenix eyes peered at Wang Chong, implying some deeper meaning. Your big uncle supports the first prince. Everyone in the court knows this, and so do you. And yet you insist that I should support the fifth prince. What is going on with your Wang clan? Or perhaps you want to become opponents with your big uncle. Also, I've recently heard a rumor that the fifth prince encountered some mysterious expert that helped him reform his body, granting him the ability to cultivate, accomplishing the practically impossible. If my guess is correct, that mysterious expert behind the fifth prince is probably closely related to you, right? Her phoenix eyes blinked, a sharpness glimmering within them as they sought to pierce into the depths of Wang Chong's soul. Wang Chong's mind trembled as he hurriedly lowered his head. At the moment, the majority of the imperial palace, and all the princes, consorts, and concubines, were trying to find out how the fifth prince had suddenly had his body reformed and regained the ability to cultivate. They were also investigating that mysterious person behind him. If someone were to find out that it was him playing tricks behind the prince, the entire Wang clan would probably become the foe of all the princes, consorts, and concubines of the palace. Thus, he had done his utmost to avoid meeting the fifth prince in public so as to prevent others from finding out. And while meeting consort Taizhen, he had done his best to avoid discussing his relationship with the fifth prince. However, consort Taizhen was clearly not as simple as the outside world imagined her to be. She could not be so easily misled. Wang Chong had not even brought up this topic, but consort Taizhen had already guessed at the truth. Yes, Wang Chong replied without any hesitation. One could not overestimate someone, but one also couldn't underestimate them. In the outside world, many people believed that consort Taizhen had relied purely on her looks to reach her position but was otherwise an ordinary woman who lacked any other redeeming feature. But Wang Chong knew that this was anything but true. No normal woman could be like her and endure so many criticisms for so long. A normal woman could never put up such a powerful struggle in the palace and manage to survive. Many people, when seeing consort Taizhen, were liable to focus on Yang Zhao at her side and believe that she relied on Yang Zhao for everything. But Wang Chong knew that to think so would be the greatest of errors. Before Yang Zhao had reached the capital, consort Taizhen had already entered the palace and had even successfully put down roots. With or without Yang Zhao, she was not so soft and incompetent as the average person imagined. A trail of dust spurred by a concubine's smile, and no one knows that Lychee is coming one. Consort Taizhen was not so easily deceived or bullied as people might imagine. Anyone who dared to underestimate the supreme beauty of the Great Tang as an empty flower vase would truly be committing a fatal mistake. Women had always been the easiest types of people to underestimate. It was precisely because he understood this principle that Wang Chong made no attempt to deny, not even showing the slightest hesitation. Any action that he made because he believed he was too smart would just end up with him being too smart for his own good. It really is you? Yang Zhao and consort Taizhen were both flabbergasted by Wang Chong's response. Not even consort Taizhen had expected Wang Chong to so easily confess. It's me, Wang Chong once more confirmed. Why? Consort Taizhen was suddenly very curious. The Wang clan had already joined the first prince's faction, and if nothing out of the ordinary happened, the first prince would be the future heir. Ever since ancient times, the elder had been favored over the younger, and the son of the first wife was favored over the sons of concubines. This was not some baseless saying. Amongst the princes, the first prince assuredly had the highest chance of inheriting the empire. Consort Taizhen did not understand why Wang Chong would take such a large risk. He didn't even seem to mind being at odds with his big uncle to help the weak fifth prince, who was not only of no help to the Wang clan, but also a serious liability. What is this Qilin's son, one of the Wang clan, thinking? As consort Taizhen's eyes measured Wang Chong's body, a strain of intense curiosity suddenly appeared within them. She could put aside an ordinary person, but the person in front of her was Wang Chong. There was the graceful and outstanding talent displayed in the Song of Purity and Peace, his inconceivable success in changing King Song's mind to support her, the trembles he sent through the court and the world in the regional commander's incident, even the supreme venerable of the 9 and 5-2, the emperor that she revered as a god, was full of praise for this teenager. No matter in which aspect one investigated, this youth before her was no ordinary person and could not be assessed using common sense. Consort Taizhen suddenly wanted to know what was driving this wondrous youth to put aside his clan's standpoint, to put aside the excellent first prince, and run off to her Yuzhen palace to recommend to her the obscure fifth prince. How did he get this sort of idea? This is... Wang Chong glanced at the mysterious white-clothed beauties standing at Consort Taizhen's right and left. Consort Taizhen understood, and at a slight raise of her white wrist, the two immediately and respectfully withdrew. The only people left in the room were Consort Taizhen, Yang Zhao, and Wang Chong. It's very simple. It's because my thinking is different from my big uncle. I believe that the future heir will not be the first prince, but His Highness, the fifth prince. Once the two beauties retreated, Wang Chong immediately proclaimed his thoughts. Wang Chong also did not hide the secret he had discovered on the fifth prince's body. Consort Taizhen and Yang Zhao had already been stunned when they heard Wang Chong say that the fifth prince would be the future true dragon, the son of heaven. But when they heard that Li Heng had been taught a supreme technique that manifested the image of a five-clawed true dragon, the pair were so shocked that they couldn't speak. Even Yang Zhao, who was utterly clueless about the struggles within the palace, knew what a five-clawed true dragon symbolized. If the secret Wang Chong had revealed were to leak out, it would overturn the palace, reshaping the landscape. The princes already had a burning desire to kill Li Heng once they discovered that he could suddenly practice martial arts. If they knew that the sage emperor had passed down to him a supreme technique manifesting a five-clawed dragon, they would even risk punishment from the sage emperor to kill him. For a moment, the cousins looked at the youngster in the hall like they were seeing a ghost. This was no ordinary news or intelligence report. In fact, this was an enormous secret that could alter the entire war of the princes. Although still young, Wang Chong had managed to get a hold of such an astonishing fact. Such a feat would even stupefy the most formidable of spy masters. The great hall was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Wang Chong said nothing, but his mind was in turmoil. One can't catch a tiger without entering the tiger cave. In normal circumstances, he would have never told anyone about the fifth prince's secret. But if the fifth prince wanted to force his way through his current predicament, he needed Consort Taizhen's help. And in order to truly obtain her help, some secrets had to be told. Only this way could one obtain her trust. The facts proved that Wang Chong's risks had not been a waste. The shock on Consort Taizhen's and Yang Zhao's faces was enough to show that his words had an effect. If one said that the fifth prince was just a powerless prince at the start, then now he had unquestionably soared to new heights in the minds of Consort Taizhen and Yang Zhao. Your Majesty, the war of the princes is not a trifling matter. It's not strange for your Majesty to not be able to decide immediately. This matter is not of too pressing urgency. Your Majesty still has ample time to consider. But Wang Chong still has something to say to your Majesty. I hope that your Majesty will open this and read it once Wang Chong leaves. As Wang Chong spoke, he took a letter out of his sleeve. While his words could still have an effect on Consort Taizhen, and while the fifth prince was still being viewed favorably, Wang Chong took out his last trump card, seeking to strike while the iron was hot. Whether or not his words would be effective on Consort Taizhen and fully convince her to side with the fifth prince would all depend on this last letter. Wang Chong, what is it that you can't say in front of me? Why must it be written on a letter? As she watched Wang Chong take the letter out of his sleeve, Consort Taizhen had a very strange look on her face. He could clearly say what he wanted in front of her, yet he insisted on taking out a letter. Anyone would find it extremely odd. I can't. Your Majesty will understand once you read it. Wang Chong held the letter with both hands as he shook his head. He was abnormally stubborn this time. There were some things that could only be thought, not done, and some words that could only be read, not spoken. I understand. Bring it up. Then Wang Chong will bid farewell. After delivering the letter, Wang Chong quickly left, leaving Yuzhen Palace before the gates of the palace were completely sealed for the night. Right when Wang Chong was turning around, Consort Taizhen hesitated for a moment. In the end, she couldn't suppress her curiosity and opened the letter, taking out the sheet of paper covered in squiggly handwriting from within. With just a glance, Consort Taizhen's mind suddenly fell into a state of confusion, a look of panic flashing through her phoenix eyes. But it was only an instant before she quickly hid these emotions. Not even the nearby Yang Zhao noticed. Sister, what did that rascal write? Yang Zhao came over, glancing at the letter as he curiously asked. He was truly too curious as to what Wang Chong insisted on writing in a letter over speaking aloud. It's nothing. To Yang Zhao's surprise, the Consort Taizhen who trusted him completely and would share any secret with him elected this time to stretch out her fingers and crush the letter and envelope in her hands. Before Yang Zhao had been able to see a single word, this letter had returned to the void. Yang Zhao was stunned. Such a thing had never happened before. His entire person froze, so caught by surprise he was. "Cousin, pass on my decree. Take one of my jade tokens and bestow it on 5th Prince Li Heng. Just say that the filial piety he expressed with the sword dance he presented to the sage emperor deeply impressed me, and that I'm gifting this to him." After giving this order, Consort Taizhen turned and entered the inner hall. Behind her, Xianxia was dumbstruck. Even if one beat him to death, he still wouldn't be able to understand what Consort Taizhen had seen in Wang Chong's letter that left her so flustered. Moreover, Consort Taizhen had clearly been undecided a few moments ago. Why was it that upon seeing Wang Chong's letter, she had immediately changed her mind and wanted to bestow a jade token on Li Heng? And she wanted him to deliver the decree. Wasn't this announcing to the entire palace that she would be protecting Prince Li Heng in the future? This was the complete opposite of his cousin's initial desire to not get involved in the War of the Princes. "Yes, this humble servant will carry out the decree." Yang Zhao sighed and gave a deep bow, then turned and left the hall. No matter what his cousin decided, he would carry it out with all his power. But there was one thing he couldn't get over. What sort of bewitching drug had his sworn brother used on Consort Taizhen that one letter could cause such a major shift in her stance? This sworn brother of mine, he's really not someone a normal person can fathom. Yang Zhao gave a sigh caught between joy and sorrow, anger and pleasure. Shaking his head, he quickly walked out of Yuzhen Palace. He could almost imagine that once he left, another mighty wave would rage through the depths of this palace. Given his cousin's current status, she was completely capable of stirring another storm within the palace. And at this same moment, Consort Taizhen walked through the depths of Yuzhen Palace in a similarly vexed and absent-minded state. Waves were raging in her mind, all of them caused by Wang Chong's scribbly handwriting. Although she had burned the letter, those words had been seared deep into her mind. In general, those who rely on their appearance will find that affections wane along with their appearance, and kindness vanishes as appearance wanes. Wang Chong had written nothing else to Consort Taizhen, only the simple phrase that seemingly had no head or tail. Yet Consort Taizhen already understood what Wang Chong meant. Wang Chong had not been the original author of these words. Rather, they came from the great Qin Empire of more than 1,000 years ago. An itinerant political advisor of the time had used these words to convince the most beloved Lady Huayang to take Qin Yiren as her adopted son 3. And the latter would eventually become the heir apparent to the kingdom of Qin, giving birth to the emperor who would be forever known for uniting the Central Plains for the first time. Shi Huangdi Yingzheng, a figure on the same level as the present-day sage emperor. Lady Huayang had been dearly beloved yet had no sons or daughters, just like Consort Taizhen now. And Qin Yiren was an outsider with no one to rely on and no one who thought highly of him, just like the current 5th Prince Li Heng. But all these comparisons paled before the surface meaning of those simple words. In general, those who rely on their appearance will find that affections wane along with their appearance, and kindness vanishes as appearance wanes. Consort Taizhen was well aware of how she had reached her current status, and it had left a deep concern in her heart. It was this concern that allowed Wang Chong's words to deliver such a shocking blow. All those words that Wang Chong had said, all those secrets he had revealed, were far inferior to the shock this single line of words had delivered. Because this truly was that greatest worry and taboo in the deepest depths of her heart that she had never spoken of to anyone. Wang Chong, you'd better hope that this consort did not misjudge. Congratulations to you, sir, for participating in the War of the Princes, the True Dragon Plan, and changing 5th Prince Li Heng's fate. You are awarded 15 destiny energy. As Wang Chong walked out of the imperial palace in the darkness and the large gate shut behind him, he heard a voice ringing out in his mind. Along with this voice, he felt a gentle breeze, and an invisible energy emerged from the depths of space-time and into Wang Chong's body. Wang Chong felt a warmth in his body. I've finally succeeded. Wang Chong's lips curved into a faint smile. He knew that his final letter had proved effective. When dealing with the Tibetan experts in the practice ground, Wang Chong had already obtained 15 points of destiny energy. Now, with his harvests from Consort Taizhen, Wang Chong had gained 30 points of destiny energy in just one day. At present, Wang Chong had currently accumulated 109 points of destiny energy. And if one counted the destiny energy he had used to buy the panther bone, the gold organs, and the blood reformation for Li Heng, as well as the destiny energy consumed by the world constraints, Wang Chong had so far obtained more than 200 points of destiny energy. And to Wang Chong, that he had obtained 200 points of destiny energy at this point had a completely new meaning. I can finally exchange for origin energy items. Wang Chong walked the stone-paved street and gave a long sigh of relief. The rewards offered by the Stone of Destiny could be divided into mind, body, energy, techniques, and power. However, because he had not accumulated enough destiny energy, Wang Chong had only been able to exchange for rewards of the body category, like the panther bone, gold organs, and blood reformation. If he wanted to increase his origin energy, Wang Chong could only buy the medicines of the imperial household. But things were different now that he had unlocked the origin energy category. Wang Chong could now use destiny energy to buy origin energy items that could increase his strength. Thus, Wang Chong's strength would increase at an even faster rate. Young master! Footsteps came from the darkness, breaking Wang Chong's train of thought. Old Eagle, with a large bird on his shoulder, was striding toward him. How was it? It's fine. Wang Chong smiled and signaled that everything had gone well. With things taken care of on Consort Taizhen's side, the fifth prince would be able to sleep soundly. Although he couldn't be said to be absolutely safe with Consort Taizhen's protection, at least everyone would have to think twice before they acted. Even the first prince and the third prince would not dare to act recklessly. Come, let's return to the training camp. Taking the reins from the Wang clan guards following Old Eagle, Wang Chong mounted his horse. Everything was on the right path, and the fifth prince was also on his own path to fight for the throne. It was now time for his own plans. With the deflecting blade manor at its current level of development, it was time to proceed to the next phase of his plan. But what I wonder how Dusong Mangpoj is doing? As he gazed at the dark sky and the numerous lights of the city, Wang Chong recalled that Yusang Great General who had traveled to the Great Tang incognito, and a faint smile appeared on his lips. This famous Yusang Great General was indubitably an existence that was a great thorn in the Great Tang's side. He was not only extremely strong, but also equally intelligent. Thus, even someone like Geshu Han, one of the Great Tang's heroes who guarded the Yusang border, was completely incapable of capturing him. However, with his identity being exposed in the capital, he was probably not about to encounter any good fortune. Run, run. Let me see how lucky you are. Wang Chong smiled and then urged his horse in the direction of deflecting blade manor. Dust spluttered under the hard hooves of a horse. While Wang Chong was riding toward deflecting blade manor, in the darkness 60-some li from the Great Tang capital, a squadron of Yusang cavalry were galloping toward the Tibetan plateau. After Wang Chong exposed Dusong Mangpoj's identity on the practice ground, the Yusang delegation did not even return to their hostel. They immediately left the capital of the Great Tang, fleeing under the starry night toward the Tibetan plateau. Faster! The Great Tang is no longer safe. Only once we return to the plateau of the empire will we be completely out of danger. On his horse, Dusong Mangpoj constantly urged his soldiers on, his expression grave. An Yusang officer raised his head and asked, "Great General, might we be overthinking things? Perhaps the Great Tang has no intention of dealing with us? After all, we're already 60-some li from the Great Tang capital and nothing has happened." A tiny sliver of hope was audible in his words. Ever since they had left the practice ground, Great General Dusong Mangpoj had been urging them on. They were not doubting the Great General's judgment and reputation. It was just that they had not encountered anything on their entire journey. Other than their own doubts, the only thing by their side was the wind howling through the mountains. It seemed that they were doing nothing but frightening themselves. In the past that would be the case, but now is completely different. I also hope that I'm being paranoid, but that's impossible, Dusong Mangpoj sternly replied. Ever since he had left the capital, someone had been locked onto him from a distance, constantly observing and trailing him. This feeling had disappeared a moment ago, but Dusong Mangpoj did not dare get careless. A centipede can die, but it will never fall over. The current Great Tang was far from that mighty hegemon that valiantly swept through the world. Yet the elites and higher-ups of this empire still contained extremely formidable figures that could not be underestimated. That Central Plains youngster in the square was the best example. Dusong Mangpoj had wanted to kill him many times, but he had ultimately managed to suppress the desire. Although he wasn't clear on the youngster's exact background, it was certainly no ordinary one. That youngster had deliberately attempted to provoke him several times into striking. Dusong Mangpoj had understood what that youngster wanted. If he killed the youth, the Great Tang Empire would have an excuse to attack him in the capital. If such a thing really did occur, then it would be just like the youth said. He would not have made it out of the capital alive. The youth's predictions had been right on the mark. I had believed that the Central Plains were waning when I made this trip to the Great Tang. I didn't expect to meet such an evil young man on the last day. The lot of the Central Plains is still not completely exhausted. Dusong Mangpoj mentally sighed. The first prince and the elite horsemen under him served as a cover, allowing him to see the sage emperor with his own eyes. This had been a top-secret mission that nobody except the members of their group knew of. Not even the ministers of the Great Tang had been able to see through it. Dusong Mangpoj had originally believed that nobody would see through it, not even after they finished the first prince's trick and returned to the plateau of the empire. Unexpectedly, that young man had seen through it, and then he had killed that Tibetan horseman without hesitation, damaging the imposing demeanor of the Tibetan party. Of course, it would have been fine if that was all. After all, it was just a trick the first prince had thought up on the spur of the moment, just a game. But then that youngster had exposed his identity. This was what had truly shocked Dusong Mangpoj. If this youth had been some famous figure of the Great Tang, he would have been able to accept it. But the youth's age meant that it was impossible for the youth to have ever seen him, much less recognize him. Just like that, the identity that he had kept intact for 3 months had been exposed, truly leaving Dusong Mangpoj unprepared. "Great General, I'm sorry. It's all because I've dragged you down." At this moment, a voice came from his side. Dusong Mangpoj turned his head and saw a Tibetan horseman, looking at him with an expression of shame. "There's no need for First Prince's apology. I was the one who decided on this venture. Coming to the Great Tang has been a dream of mine for many years and has nothing to do with you. There's no need for First Prince to criticize yourself." Dusong Mangpoj grinned and waved his hand. This ashamed Tibetan horseman was naturally the actual Yusang First Prince. Tibetans were a dauntless and fierce people who worshipped strength. The Yusang First Prince was a prime example of this, and he had a proud personality that did not make it easy for him to apologize to others. However, the First Prince also knew that the gravity of the situation could not be underestimated. If a great general of the Great Tang Empire infiltrated Yusang alone, then the Tibetans would assuredly put all their strength into making sure they stayed. This was obviously the situation facing Dusong Mangpoj. Although the others were doubtful, not daring to be sure that someone was truly after them, the Yusang First Prince knew that the elites of the Great Tang would not let this chance pass by. If he hadn't been so proud and taken with his intelligence, stirring up that practice ground incident, the situation would have never reached this point. Could be said that if anything bad happened to Dusong Mangpoj, it was all his fault. Yusang had millions of brave soldiers, but it only had a scant few great generals. If Dusong Mangpoj were to encounter some mishap in the Great Tang, it would be a massive stain on this mission and deal a critical blow to his chances of becoming the next Senpo. This was the reason for the First Prince's concern. "Listen to what I have to say. As long as we are still within the confines of the Great Tang capital, Great Tang won't dare to touch us. But once we are a certain distance from the capital, everything changes. If something happens to us, the Great Tang will easily push the responsibility to someone else. Moreover, to deal with me, they will definitely attack the rest of you as well. Only this way can they make the incident look convincing. This is why I've escorted you out of the capital. In a little while, none of you should take the main road. Once we leave this place, split up into groups and choose a direction to escape. Do not look back until you return to the Tibetan plateau." Dusong Mangpoj ordered, his voice carrying an ominous tone. "General, you're not coming with us?" An Yusang officer suddenly sensed something and raised his head. "Of course he can't go with you." It wasn't Dusong Mangpoj replying. A voice had suddenly spoken, frightening the Tibetans. Who is it? Who's lurking around out there? Get out here." As some of their comrades shouted, a few of the horsemen seemed to sense something and turned around as one, their bright scimitars leaving their sheaths to aim at the direction the voice had come from. Whoosh! A breeze blew past. An aloof figure dressed in snow-white clothes emerged in front of the party. With his silk belt drifting in the wind and his hands clasped behind him, he slowly walked out of the rustling forest. His thin body exuded an energy as mighty as the mountains and seas. Boom! A silver boot lightly touched the ground, and the world quaked. The energy of the forest in a several thousand zhang radius suddenly transformed. All the grass, trees, the branches and leaves began to emit a sharp energy, all of it aimed at Dusong Mangpoj's party on the main road. Nay! The war horses whinnied, and in an instant, all these fine steeds trained on the Tibetan plateau reared up, their eyes open and their manes bristling. It was as if they had sensed some terrible danger. "It's you!" When Dusong Mangpoj saw the elegant white-clothed figure with the feather fan and bound-up head covering, his expression turned cold, and only one thought remained in his mind. Dusong Mangpoj knew who this person was. In the capital of the Great Tang, this person was undoubtedly the leader of the Confucian school, a title which he fully deserved. Even in the capital of the Great Tang, this person was an influential figure of the highest distinction one. Although he was not a great general who led armies in terms of influence, he was on par with or even above Geshu Han and the other great generals of the Central Plains. Dusong Mangpoj had not imagined that the Great Tang would invite this character out for the sake of killing him. "Ha ha! It is I!" The man's face seemed to be carved from jade, and though the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes were so deep that they seemed to be 50 or 60, the rest of his face was that of a 30 or 40-year-old. Hanging on his belt were a long sword and a little bell. The bell drifted in the wind, crisply ringing as it bumped against the silver sheath. He looked like a refined and weak man, but in Dusong Mangpoj's eyes, he was the mightiest of foes. "The Emperor of the Great Tang truly thinks highly of me," Dusong Mangpoj gravely said as he looked at this visitor. "Ha ha! Great General has shown such good faith, disregarding the vast distance to visit the capital. No matter what, we must entertain you well. 10 years ago, Great General also wore plain clothes and stealthily entered. This lowly Li came as fast he could but was not in time to receive you. This time, I must have a chat and a drink with General." As the middle-aged man spoke, he slowly walked forward, and the sharp sword intent released by the leaves and blades of grass grew ever more formidable. This feeling like a dagger at one's back made all the Tibetan horsemen, including the first prince, sit up in unease with their hairs bristling in fear. Tibetans were not afraid of bloody charges on the battlefield, but the situation before them had clearly exceeded the normal carnage of the battlefield. "You're after me, so can you let them go?" Dusong Mangpoj knew that no matter what, it was hard for today's events to turn out well for him. He could only hope that he could use himself to take the attention off these other people and allow them to escape. I personally do not care. However, whether they can escape with their lives will still depend on themselves. After all, I didn't come alone. The white-clothed, middle-aged man's voice contained a deeper meaning, yet his eyes did not even glance at the first prince and the other Tibetans behind Dusong Mangpoj. It was like these elite Tibetan horsemen really were just little fish that had been inadvertently caught in his net. For a moment, all the Tibetan horsemen felt a sense of humiliation, but for some reason, they also felt relieved. This person was far too powerful, so powerful that none of them could gather the will to resist. The gap between the two sides was simply incalculable. "I understand. Why haven't all of you left yet?" Rumble. The rest of the horsemen understood and quickly scattered. Even the first prince fled in panic. Some people took some different directions, running off like stray dogs. In a few moments, they had disappeared into the dense forest. And just as Dusong Mangpoj had said in his last order, of these some people, Not one chose to take the wide and flat main road. Dusong Mangpoj did not move. Not until the first prince and the others had left and were far away did he finally turn around to face the leader of the Great Tang's Confucian school. "Come!" Dusong Mangpoj shouted. Since he couldn't avoid this and matters had already reached this stage, he might as well fight. "Ha ha, as general wishes." In front of the forest, the dangerous and frightening white-clothed man faintly smiled, and then, under the watchful gaze of Dusong Mangpoj, he extended a silver-booted foot. Boom! After a moment, there was a massive explosion as a massive pillar of light spiraled into the air, accompanied by the roars of dragons. The dazzling light transformed night into day, and as the boundless destructive energy in this pillar of light was unleashed, all the trees in a radius of 10 some li were instantly rendered into ash. This was a heaven-shaking battle. Wang Chong only heard the news 2 days later. An Yusang diplomatic mission returning from the Great Tang to Yusang had passed through Longxi and entered the borderlands when they were suddenly attacked by the Turks. Other than the Yusang first prince and a small number of the Tibetan warriors, no one else had escaped. The Great Tang Empire had expressed its deepest apologies for this incident. It had even stated that though the first prince's party had not been attacked in the Great Tang's borders, in the future, the Great Tang would redouble its efforts in exterminating the Turks roaming along its borders. As for the person Wang Chong was most concerned about, the Yusang Great General Dusong Mangpoj, not a single person in the Great Tang discussed him, neither in the court nor amongst the common people. It was like this Yusang Great General had never appeared. And this was also apparently the truth. Dusong Mangpoj's name was nowhere to be found in the list of people on the diplomatic mission from the Yusang Empire. Replacing him was some obscure Tibetan soldier. Since he had never come, there was nothing to discuss. When Wang Chong heard this news from Old Eagle, he roared with laughter. To play this sort of trick, the imperial court also seemed to have some very capable people. This was why it was said that politics was always the dirtiest game, no matter where it was. However, Wang Chong had made inquiries in many areas and used the resources of his own clan to finally obtain some information on Dusong Mangpoj. Dusong Mangpoj had managed to successfully escape, but with heavy injuries. Given his injuries, this powerful great general would not be seen on the borders of the Great Tang and Yusang for a very long time. Alas, even like this, he still managed to escape. In Deflecting Blade Manor, Wang Chong sat on the floor, slapping the letter onto the table with an expression of regret. After having his identity exposed, Dusong Mangpoj had still managed to get away with only severe injuries. This was far too different from what Wang Chong had anticipated. If this Yusang Great General had died in the Great Tang, he might have been able to receive some destiny energy as a reward for changing fate. But Wang Chong also knew that Dusong Mangpoj was a character on the same level as Geshu Han, Fuming Lingcha, Gao Xianji, and Zhang Shogui. It was not too difficult for these characters to be heavily wounded, but killing them was a completely different matter. After all, the strength of an imperial great general could not be underestimated. Moreover, if they put everything into escaping, stopping them was no trifling task. However, regardless of the result, now that Yusang lacked this powerful force, the western borders of the empire would be much calmer. The pressure on Geshu Han would also be greatly lightened. In this aspect, he had unintentionally greatly assisted Geshu Han. Forget it. Heavily injuring him is already a pretty good result. It seems like truly killing him can only be done on the actual battlefield. As he turned over these thoughts in his mind, Wang Chong quickly calmed down. Dabbing his brush in ink, he continued to write in the book on the table. Brightwell Scripture? After writing this title on the first page, Wang Chong quickly began to recall the details of this scripture, and his memories swiftly became a scripture written out on the paper. He was transcribing the techniques in his memories. In truth, there were already a few techniques in Deflecting Blade Manor that had been transcribed by Wang Chong, but these were far from enough. What Wang Chong wanted to do was create in Deflecting Blade Manor a scripture depository that was Deflecting Blade Manors alone. Only this way would Deflecting Blade Manor be complete, would it be able to provide him all the advantage it could. Moreover, in the future, when he wasn't there, it would still be able to attract talented individuals and provide the empire a steady stream of gifted individuals. The insight, experience, and fighting power that he could provide, coupled with the massive supply of students provided by the Kunwu training camp, meant that the people who joined Deflecting Blade Manor were not only able to learn strategy and cultivate in the spirit vein, they could also learn a large number of techniques that could not be easily learned outside. And since Deflecting Blade Manor spanned across all 3 training camps, the network that it was slowly nurturing would allow the talents of Deflecting Blade Manor to be quickly placed in the jobs that they could excel in. Only by putting all his resources at work could Wang Chong begin to alter the slow decline of the Great Tang and shake up the system of the Central Plains. One person's strength was far too weak. Only when many people pooled their strength could they change an era, change the fate of an empire. Though Deflecting Blade Manor was small, this was the fulcrum Wang Chong would use to gather the strength of others and alter this era. Once he finished writing the Bright Will scripture, which could calm the mind and drive out heart demons, Wang Chong put it aside and called over Old Eagle. Take these scriptures to the underground scripture cave. The scripture depository was still under construction, and Deflecting Blade Manor did not have the ability to protect the scriptures. So Wang Chong had chosen to temporarily store the scriptures in a cave under Deflecting Blade Manor. But young master, the ever-obedient Old Eagle unexpectedly stood there, not carrying out Wang Chong's order. That person is in the scripture cave. Isn't it a little inconvenient? Haha. That makes it even better. With him there, the scripture cave will be safe and sound. How can that be bad? Wang Chong raised his head and smiled. Wang Chong knew who Old Eagle was speaking of. There was only one person who dared to force their way into Deflecting Blade Manor, utterly ignoring his orders while making others too afraid to provoke him. The future invincible great general, the currently obscure Li Sai. A few days ago, when Li Sai had come to find Wang Chong, he had inadvertently found the cave. At the start, Li Sai had disdained to even look at those scriptures. How impressive could the scriptures some wet-behind-the-ears brat had written for his own amusement be? But after he flipped through a few books, Li Sai's mood flipped too. Li Sai had essentially cooped himself up in that cave. He was a brave subject devoted to his country, but he was also a martial arts maniac. Wang Chong knew this, so he simply lifted the ban. Not only did he allow Li Sai to read all the books in the cave, he even prepared 3 meals a day for him, allowing him to put all his focus into the books. In reality, Li Sai was basically working as a part-time guard for Wang Chong's scriptures. With this person here, Wang Chong temporarily did not have to worry about anything happening to the scripture cave. Young master, that's not what I mean. Old Eagle hurriedly continued. Although young master has already permitted him to read all the scriptures in the cave, and he also helped you retrieve the Hyderabad ore, allowing him to read those scriptures is enough of a reward. Wouldn't keeping a few secrets be better? I know that young master deeply admires him, but he will still leave in the end. He won't be walking the same path as us. Old Eagle had always believed his young master to be a smart person, so he didn't understand why he would act so foolishly over Li Sai. Ha ha ha. Seeing that Old Eagle really was concerned, Wang Chong couldn't help but laugh. Though he hadn't noticed before, there were times when Old Eagle could be rather adorable. Wang Chong knew that Old Eagle was only worried about him, and if his goal had been to dominate the world or rise rapidly through the court, Old Eagle's advice was completely on the mark. But this time, Old Eagle truly was wrong. The more books the invincible great general Li Sai read, the more he learned, the more advantage he would present to him and the future empire. Wang Chong was not worried that he would read too much, but too little. He was even adding in the Bright Will scripture, this high-level technique that could subdue heart demons and calm the mind, precisely because he was afraid that in all this reading, Li Sai might bite off more than he could chew and suffer a cultivation defect. Wang Chong was confident that given Li Sai's personality, he would definitely read this book. Old Eagle, relax. I have my plans for Li Sai and they won't result in any loss for us. Let him do what he wants. Wang Chong waved his hands and smiled. Still a little hesitant, Old Eagle finally nodded. Although he still felt a little inappropriate, he still chose to believe in Wang Chong's judgment. After taking the scriptures that Wang Chong had transcribed from the table, he held them to his chest, bid farewell to Wang Chong, and quickly left for the underground scripture cave. After Old Eagle left, Wang Chong calmed back down. It's about time. Wang Chong fell silent for a few moments and then put the brush back onto its rack. Quite a few scriptures had been added to the scripture cave now, and it was already beginning to take shape. More important now was still the problem of his own strength. Since I've now accumulated 109 points of destiny energy, I can exchange for origin energy rewards, Wang Chong said to himself as he thought about the Stone of Destiny. In the past, Wang Chong had always exchanged for body items, but now he could finally exchange for higher-level rewards. The room was still and devoid of other individuals, and normal people would not dare to lightly enter this room. Wang Chong's thoughts immediately reached out to the Stone of Destiny in his mind. In the next moment, a screen of light opened in front of Wang Chong. On it a page with a set of completely new items. Origin Energy Pill. Cost: 10 points. Can increase a warrior's origin energy. Only useful to warriors at the origin energy realm. At most, can bring a warrior to origin energy tier 9. At the same time, it will permanently provide a weak boost to the speed at which origin energy circulates through a warrior's body. It will also increase the warrior's ability to accept and attract natural origin energy. Note: Origin Energy Pill will be less effective with each additional pill taken. This was Wang Chong's first time seeing the rewards available for exchange in the Origin Energy category. The first thing he saw was a low-level pill that also had an extremely low price. Although it had a very strict limit, only being useful on warriors of the Origin Energy realm and thus absolutely useless to the current Wang Chong, its use was still very obvious. Permanently provide a weak boost to the speed at which origin energy circulates through a warrior's body, and also increase the warrior's ability to accept and attract natural origin energy. These 2 points increased the value of this pill by several times. A weak boost to the speed at which origin energy circulates meant that one would be able to strike faster, to use their energy faster, and as battles stretched on, one would possess a greater advantage. And increase the ability to accept and attract natural origin energy meant that when cultivating, one would get stronger at a faster rate. Although both of these were described as a weak boost, these 2 effects made the origin energy pill extremely precious, even if it was useless to those of the true martial realm and above. I can exchange for this pill when I need it and use it to reward Zhao Jingdian and the others, increasing their strength. Wang Chong contemplated the screen in his mind. An error of a single hair could lead 1,000 li astray. It was just a tiny difference, but since all cultivators had to confront the same bottlenecks, these small differences were often crucial. And in intense conflicts of army against army, general against general, a difference in the circulation speed of origin energy was often the difference between life and death. It was precisely this point that led Wang Chong to decide that as long as it would not affect his own situation, he would give all the core members of Deflecting Blade Manor one of these origin energy pills. With a thought from Wang Chong, the contents on the screen changed, revealing another item. This one was related to stellar energy. Stellar Energy Honer alters the nature of stellar energy, increasing the sharpness of stellar energy. Every third exchange will provide a grade 1 halo of sharpness. No limits to use. Cost: 15 points. These simple words caused Wang Chong's eyelids to shoot up. The effects of the origin energy pill were shocking enough, but the effects of this item were even more amazing. It can change the nature of stellar energy. That's inconceivable. Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil as he sat cross-legged on the ground. He had felt that getting a pill that could increase stellar energy would be fine. He hadn't expected the Stone of Destiny to have an item that could directly change the nature of stellar energy. This was far more than Wang Chong had expected. Exchanging 3 times will even result in the effect of a grade 1 halo. That's basically getting a halo from nothing. That's unbelievable. Wang Chong was truly stupefied by the origin energy items offered by the Stone of Destiny. Although a grade 1 halo was the lowest grade of halo and couldn't change too much, Wang Chong had immediately noticed its hidden value. This ability was not limited. This meant that as long as one had enough destiny energy, one could have a high-level halo that was normally only possible at the higher levels of the true martial realm, even as high as tier 5 or 6. The only problem was that though this reward seemed very generous, it had a shockingly high price. In order to gain this Grade 1 halo, one needed to pay 45 destiny energy. This was no small burden for Wang Chong's current stock of destiny energy. This sort of expense was not something Wang Chong could squander his funds endlessly on. Moreover, different grades of halos required one to accumulate different amounts of halos. When upgrading from a Grade 1 halo to a Grade 2 halo, one might only need to accumulate one Grade 1 halo, but to move from Grade 2 to Grade 3 was not so simple. And as one went from 3 to 4, from 4 to 5, one would need even more. But basically, to exchange for a single Grade 1 halo is already rather decent, Wang Chong said to himself. He had quickly identified the practical uses for this stellar energy honer. Just like the origin energy pill, the effect of the stellar energy honer could only help warriors fight people on the same level, giving them a small advantage in these fights. In this aspect, Wang Chong had no need to exchange for a Grade 1 halo of sharpness. The truly wise and reasonable decision was to just exchange for 1/3 of the halo. Wang Chong's gaze focused as he swiftly made up his mind and continued reading. The item that appeared before him now was completely different from the first two. Stellar Energy Piercer alters the nature of the warrior's stellar energy, improving its piercing nature. Provides the warrior a small chance of ignoring the opponent's defense, piercing through stellar energy barriers and attacking the opponent's internals. Is effective on opponents 3 levels higher at maximum. Upgradable. Upgrade condition. Complete the training challenge. Cost: 45 points. Note: the stellar energy piercer can be exchanged for without limit. As it increases in grade, the probability of piercing through the opponent's defense increases and the maximum level gap also increases. When the stellar energy piercer reaches a certain level, it can always ignore the opponent's defense, piercing through stellar energy with absolute success. The resplendent words on the screen finally caused Wang Chong's eyes to shine. This was the most tempting ability he had ever seen offered by the Stone of Destiny. Although the Stone of Destiny had not said that this ability could strengthen a warrior, a perceptive person like him understood that the ability to pierce through stellar energy was far more powerful than the effects of any other item he had previously seen. He could think about ways to improve his strength, but it was impossible for him to grant himself the ability to pierce through stellar energy. Wang Chong's mind was bursting with techniques, but he had never heard of one that could pierce through stellar energy. This ability was undoubtedly one of the only methods to defeat a far stronger opponent. But the cost to exchange for the stellar energy piercer was far too high, 45 points of destiny energy. Cost even more than blood reformation. But when he thought about that unique piercing ability, this price was worth it. There's no need to choose. It's got to be this one. With a thought, Wang Chong immediately exchanged for the stellar energy piercer on the screen. Crack! A mysterious bolt of energy flew out of the Stone of Destiny and into Wang Chong's body. In the next moment, thunder seemed to rumble in the building, sounding like it was exploding right next to his ears. A violent energy, brimming with the power of lightning, seeped into the stellar energy within Wang Chong's body. Like water dropping into oil, Wang Chong's stellar energy instantly began to boil. A new, unprecedented stellar energy characteristic was granted to Wang Chong. In the span of second, the feeling within Wang Chong's body had completely transformed. If Wang Chong's stellar energy was a calm and deep stream at the start, it was now a turbulent river. But on the surface it still seemed very calm. This stellar energy. Wang Chong silently pondered the changes in his body. Bang! In the next moment, without any warning, Wang Chong slapped his palm on the table. The table did not suddenly splinter into pieces as expected. Wang Chong raised his hand, and in the middle of the hard sandalwood table was a hole about the size of a thumb. And if one looked through the hole, one would notice that the energy had gone through the floor and into the room below. So this is the stellar energy piercer. Wang Chong pensively looked at the hole in the table. When he was slapping down his palm, he had clearly sensed that a portion of the stellar energy in his palm had suddenly condensed into a vortex, its piercing strength and sharpness suddenly multiplying. It was through this that it had been able to pierce through the hard sandalwood. Solely in terms of sharpness, this energy was comparable to Wang Chong's sword qi, but its piercing strength was even greater. This ability is actually very similar to Sword Chi, but it's still lacking in destructive power. It's still of very limited use against top-notch experts. If I can combine this ability with Sword Chi, using Sword Chi to replace the stellar energy, the power will definitely be multiplied. Wang Chong's martial intuition quickly let him sense the hidden abilities of the stellar energy piercer. Whoosh! In the next moment, Wang Chong's finger rose and pointed at the distant wall. Awkwardly, however, Wang Chong did not see the expected result. Nothing came out of Wang Chong's finger. Oops! I forgot that there's only a chance of activating the stellar energy piercer. Wang Chong sat in a daze as he sheepishly remembered. His momentary joy had made him forget that he had no control over the stellar energy piercer. The Stone of Destiny had altered the nature of his stellar energy. But it wasn't something as simple as changing its form so that he could form a vortex with it. Wang Chong proceeded to sit and constantly jab out with his finger. On his 16th attempt, a scalding bolt of stellar energy finally shot out of his fingers and exploded against the wall, leaving a giant hole. The massive rumble attracted the notice of the other students in Deflecting Blade manner. A ruckus could be heard outside, though Old Eagle quickly managed to calm it down. Only Wang Chong could have made so much noise in that room. No matter what happened, there was nothing that could happen in that room that was worth making a fuss over. As Wang Chong listened to the activity from outside die down, a faint smile appeared on his lips, though this too quickly faded away. This destructive power, even a true martial Tier 5 expert could suffer a fatal blow. Wang Chong nodded with satisfaction at the hole in the wall. Although he had only launched a bolt of energy, by doing his utmost to work with the energy vortex of the stellar energy piercer, he had been able to increase its destructive power by 10 times. In other words, even without borrowing the power of a charging warhorse, Wang Chong could still rely on his own stellar energy to harm a true martial Tier 5 expert. Moreover, Wang Chong had made another discovery. The Stone of Destiny didn't give the exact probability of triggering the stellar energy piercer, only saying that it was small, but from my experiments it's basically once every 16 tries. This means that the trigger probability is basically 5%. Wang Chong sat on the ground, his eyes shining with an intelligent light. Many things didn't need to be explained. As long as one was sufficiently intelligent, one could experiment to find out. 5% seemed like a very low chance, with attempts usually meeting with failure. But if a battle was intense enough and one attacked often enough, at a certain level, the stellar energy piercer would appear at a sufficiently steady rate. And if he was skilled enough at keeping count, Wang Chong was completely capable of having the stellar energy piercer appear when he needed it. Whoosh! With a thought, Wang Chong jabbed his finger again. Wang Chong continued to experiment, eventually confirming his hypothesis. The chance of triggering the stellar energy piercer was about 5%. With proper utilization, this technique would be extremely effective. Whoa! While he was cultivating, Wang Chong suddenly heard a burst of cheers from outside, attracting his attention. On impulse, Wang Chong suddenly stood up and, pushing open the door, walked outside. In the next moment, Wang Chong calmed down and decided to just stand in the doorway. Outside the door, snow was falling down from the overcast sky. It's snowing. Wang Chong stretched out a finger, catching a drifting snowflake. He had a dazed look on his face. While he had been engrossed in cultivation, it had gradually become winter. Without his notice, his reincarnated life in this world had gone on for more than a year. 1 year. Wang Chong muttered to himself and sighed, his cold breath condensing into frost. Although only a year had passed, in Wang Chong's perception, it had been a year of winter this entire time. Ha ha ha! It's snowing! It's snowing! A hubbub of voices began to rise from Deflecting Blade Manor, and even Kunwu training camp was filled with cheers. People began to gather on the various mountains. Whether they had been riding horses, climbing poles, fighting practice matches, or shooting arrows, everyone excitedly cheered in the falling snow. The snow fell fast and thick. In just a few moments, the world was shrouded in mist. In the mountains, the trees cloaked in snow seemed to be silver maidens clothed in white silk. From a distance, they were as beautiful as a painting. Clatter! A warhorse suddenly came neighing out of the snowstorm, the sound of its hooves resounding in the storm. Mounted on the horse was a guard of the Wang clan. He entered deflecting Blade Manor and dismounted in front of Wang Chong's building. This strange action attracted Wang Chong's notice, along with the notice of all the other students in the manor. The uniformed guard, his fists clenched, put one knee on the ground. Only after taking a few breaths did he finally speak. "Young Master, Master Liang has returned." "What?" Wang Chong had only planned to give a casual glance, but these words sent a shock through his body. He wore an expression of such incredulity. It was like he had been struck by lightning. "What did you say? Say it again." "Young Master Liang has finally returned from the ocean. We've already received his message. He says that he'll be back in the capital in a few days." Boom! One stone could stir 1,000 waves. Wang Chong's hands were hidden in his sleeve, and as they fiercely clenched, they sent tremors throughout his body. In the entire Wang clan, there was only one person addressed as Master Liang, the cousin that Wang Chong had dispatched to the ocean and had not been heard of for more than half a year. Wang Liang. Wang Liang had returned. He had finally returned from his voyage. This could be considered the best news Wang Chong had heard today. Wonderful! Wang Chong's face was bright red, and he was so excited that he almost jumped off the ground. "The letter? Let me see it." A letter stained by seawater and sweat quickly found its way into Wang Chong's hands. The damp climate and the ocean winds had left the letter wrinkled and filthy. Wang Chong did not read it very carefully, but flipped straight to the last page. And when he saw the tiny flame drawn in ink that he had so anxiously awaited on the upper right corner, he finally couldn't suppress his shivers. Success! He really did find the meteorites. An energy surged violently out of his heart. In this instant, Wang Chong's entire body went taut as blood rushed through it. When his cousin Wang Liang had left, Wang Chong had already made some arrangements with him. If this voyage turned out fruitless, he would draw a stone on the lower left corner. But if he succeeded in finding the meteorites that he had theorized, he would draw a black flame on the upper right corner of the last page. His cousin had found them. He truly had followed those speculations and found the unknown meteoric metal on those islands. In another time and space, this meteoric metal would eventually become famous due to the chryssords of Malaysia. But in this world, no one had any interest in them. They were a treasure that only he could appreciate. After more than a year, he had finally obtained a strength that could let him establish a foothold in this generation and change it. Whoosh! Turning his head, Wang Chong looked toward the mountains. The winds were howling and snow was falling faster and faster. "Helmsman, turn the rudder hard to port. The river surface is frozen. Pay attention to the ice. Rigger, quickly, furl 2 of the sails. We're traveling with the wind right now, so we don't need that many sails. All sailors, get ready to follow my orders and drop the anchor at any time. Everyone else, get to your positions. Cook, prepare to extinguish the fires. Today we'll be spending the night ashore. Today, we will all eat a good meal." 10 some days later, accompanied by a string of orders and the cracking of ice, a massive ship plowed through various obstacles like a heavy sword and approached the harbor. Crash! Crash! 2 massive anchors, 600 to 700 gene heavy, dropped down from the left and right sides of the ship. The anchors smashed through the ice layer and into the water, sending white frost flying. 1 ship, 2 ships, 3 ships. As the first ship reached the shore, the other ships also began to arrive. As they approached the shore, the entire fleet exploded with cheers. "We're back. We're finally back. Ha-ha. This old man finally doesn't have to eat dirt. Strong wine and beautiful girls. I'm going to get my fill of fun this time. Tonight. I'm not going home until I'm drunk. Okay." The entire fleet was cheering. With a swish, rope ladders and wooden stairs were put down the side of the ships. One by one, rough-skinned sailors, their faces red and brimmed with frost, began to disembark from the ships. The more formidable sailors jumped straight off. In just a few moments, the vacant and snow-covered harbor was packed with people. Everyone's faces were red from the cold, but their eyes were bright from excitement. One after another, the cooks, the sailors, the riggers, the helmsmen, the guards, the bowmen, they continued to disembark from the ships. After everyone left, a young man, his face honed by the wind and frost, finally appeared on the first ship. This youth didn't seem very old, but his eyes were those of a calm and time-tested veteran. They weren't the eyes a young man should have, and were more appropriate for a middle-aged man of 30 or 40 who had a story to tell. "I'm finally back." Wang Liang let out a cold breath of air. Taking in the dense, lively, and amiable crowd of sailors as well as the familiar yet empty harbor cloaked in white, he internally sighed. Though he had set out from here only half a year ago, it had felt so long that it seemed like another life. He had seen and experienced far too much on this adventure. Breathing in a lungful of cold air, Wang Liang raised his robe and began to descend the wooden ship stairs. The steps creaked as he walked, each creak resounding in every sailor's ear. "Captain! Captain! Captain!" As they watched Wang Liang walk down, everyone in the harbor, the sailors, the riggers, the guards, the cooks, the navigators, the archers, the crossbowmen, and the lookouts began to cheer. Each pair of eyes was filled with passion and worship. It was like this descending youth was some famous and influential figure. Wave after wave of cheers rose up from the crowd, and not even the snowstorm or the bitter cold could stop them. Even the guards of the Wang clan momentarily forgot who Wang Liang was and, just like everyone else, cheered him on as their most important captain. In their hearts, his identity as captain was clearly higher and worthier of respect than his identity as young Master Liang. He had finally disembarked, his feet meeting solid ground. As he met the numerous eyes, Wang Liang finally spoke his first words after stepping onto the mainland. "We've returned, just like I promised you all. You will all receive what you want, and that is fortune. Captain! Captain!" The already excited crowd instantly grew even more passionate. Those shining eyes inspired absolute trust in them. Every one of them was a most loyal follower and guard of Wang Liang. If anyone wanted to harm Wang Liang, they would tear that person to pieces. Just when the crowd was most excited, the clopping of hooves came from the distance, drawing their attention. This galloping was faint at first, but it quickly became a great rumble, a stampede of horses heading toward the harbor. "Look over there!" Someone pointed into the distance and shouted. In a flash, everyone looked in that direction, where they saw a black and grandiose tide surging toward the harbor. "Cree!" At the very front, a golden eagle cried out, its wings cutting through the snow like metal. And right under the golden eagle was a youth of 16 or 17 wearing a fur coat, his brows straight and his eyes bright, leading the group. Though he was young, this youth's every movement seemed to carry a certain majesty that made other people trust him. "Young Master! It's young Master Chong." The Wang clan guards were the first in the crowd to recognize him. Others soon followed. There were currently few people in the capital that didn't know the Wang clan's Qilin son. Quite a few of the members of the fleet had joined because of this youngest scion of the Wang clan. Of course, some of them had come because of his reputation, but even more because of the legendary wood steel weapons, and others because of his astonishing wealth. "Elder cousin, you've finally returned." Wang Chong rode his horse through the snow. As he approached the frozen ground of the harbor and the iced-over water, he was able to pick out Wang Liang in the very back of the crowd with just a glance. He galloped past the crowd, dismounted, took a step forward, and then embraced his cousin. "Ha ha ha! I'm back! I'm back!" Wang Liang also laughed and hugged Wang Chong back. This ocean adventure had truly been arduous, one in which he had barely escaped with his life, almost dying at sea. Yet now that he had smoothly returned home, the person Wang Liang was most grateful to was Wang Chong. If not for Wang Chong, he would never have left the walls of the capital. Perhaps he would still be in the marketplace, making his flying birds and selling his little toys. If not for Wang Chong, he would have never known about the marvelous world that existed outside of his home, or the vastness of the ocean. If not for Wang Chong, He would have never found out that in the very depths of his heart. This was what he had always wanted. The current him was the truly authentic him. He didn't want that dull life. Even without superb martial arts, even without the backing of his clan, he could still rely on his own wits and ability to win the loyalty, protection, and respect of others. Younger cousin, I didn't let you down. I brought back what you wanted. Wang Liang let go and pointed behind him to the large ships floating in the harbor. Many people had died on this voyage, and they had suffered from no small number of thunderstorms and hurricanes. Their greatest harvest had been stored in the large ships behind him. Although Wang Chong had told him that those were meteorites from beyond the heavens, none of them had been tested. Whether or not all those deaths and hardships had been worth it ultimately hinged on Wang Chong's confirmation. Hearing Wang Liang's words, Wang Chong also turned to look. However, what Wang Chong looked at was not the decks of the ships, but that the decks were much closer to the water than normal ships. Elder cousin, I've troubled you. Let's leave these matters to others. We'll go back first. You've been gone for so long, and I'm very interested in hearing about your voyage, Wang Chong said. The Wang Liang in front of him was a completely different person from the one who had set out. His face, neck, and hands had all been tanned by the scorching sun on the ocean, and the coarse, weather-beaten skin was completely out of place on a descendant of a great clan. Wang Chong had never expected to see such a composed and dignified person. Even if Wang Liang didn't say it, Wang Chong could feel that Wang Liang had many stories from this voyage. Wait a moment. Wang Liang stopped Wang Chong. Confronting Wang Chong's flabbergasted gaze, Wang Liang was quiet for a few moments, and then pointed at the members of the fleet before them. These people set out with me on this voyage and nearly lost their lives. I promised them that once I returned, I would grant them a great fortune. Ha ha ha, so that's what it was about. Relax. I've already made preparations. What do you see over there? Wang Chong pointed behind him. Following Wang Chong's finger, Wang Liang saw many horses and multiple teams of 2 carrying heavy chests made of crude copper toward them. Wang Liang began to count. 1, 2, 3. There were more than 10 of these chests. Wang Chong snapped his fingers. A horseman pulled out a saber with a clang and cut off the lock on one of the chests. Putting a hand into the chink of the lid, he lifted. In an instant, a dazzling golden light spilled forth. That copper chest was full to the bursting with dazzling gold. Seeing those chests packed with gold, the crowd excitedly cheered. Some of the more impatient ones even began to rush over. Let's go! Wang Chong led a horse over. This time, Wang Liang did not refuse and mounted the horse. Behind him, Wang Chong snapped his fingers, at which point all the clan guards, the guards sent by his big uncle, and the experts sent by Elder Hu and Elder Yi rushed toward the large ships in the harbor. Wang Chong brought Wang Liang to his own restaurant to welcome him. The entire restaurant was empty, and the table was piled high with fine foods and wine. After the windows and doors were closed and some charcoal fires lit, the atmosphere in the room quickly changed. While winter winds howled outside the room and snow piled down, the room was a bastion of warmth. Wang Chong and Wang Liang, these 2 cousins, sat across from each other at the table. Old Eagle sat on the side, an eagle perched on his shoulder. Wang Liang took a pot of warm wine out of the stove. He first poured himself a cup and then poured a cup for Wang Chong. He then took a piece of piping hot and tender beef from the food pot and took a big bite. Great! It's delicious! Wang Liang effusively praised, and then he began to chew, occasionally taking a drink of wine. You didn't used to drink alcohol? Wang Chong suddenly said as he watched Wang Liang. The Wang Liang of the past would have never done something like this, but now he did it as if it was natural. He was not like the scion of a great clan but a sailor who had spent a long time at sea. Ha ha! If you experienced what I experienced, you would also be like this. Wang Liang heartily laughed. As he spoke, he continued to eat his beef and drink his wine. What in the world happened? Wang Chong asked. He had suppressed this question for long enough already. Wang Liang did not hesitate, immediately recounting his experiences at sea. Even though Wang Chong had expected it, he still couldn't help but feel deeply moved by Wang Liang's tale. The ocean was an abyss. In that place, far from land and far from virtue, one was infinitesimally close to a hellish abyss, and one's character would undergo the harshest of trials. There, Wang Liang had to face all sorts of problems, both external and internal. As he drank, Wang Liang described his experiences. But it was only when Wang Chong heard that the Wang clan guards he had dispatched to protect Wang Liang had mutinied that he profoundly understood just how complicated the situation Wang Liang had faced was. The ocean could make the best of people into the worst and the worst into the best, and it could provoke the greatest potential in the most incapable of people. As Wang Liang recounted his journey, even Wang Chong found himself shaken to the core. Before the boundless ocean, the strength of a warrior seemed insignificant. Wang Liang's narrative let Wang Chong know that he had probably underestimated the dangers of an ocean voyage. Back then, even at his lowest, Wang Chong had never journeyed on the ocean. The largest ships, the strongest guards of the clan, and the backing of Wang clan, Wang Chong had thought that these things would be enough for him to rest easy. But in retrospect, he realized that he had been too simple-minded. Unlike the land, the ocean was changing every moment. If one fell into the ocean, even the most powerful warrior would end up dead. And one was not confronting only the might of nature. One also needed to deal with the complexities of morale and human nature. Lack of food, awful conditions, no sight of land for more than half a year, and no guarantee that one would even be able to return to dry land. It was these circumstances which were most liable to provoke the ugly side of the human heart. In the most dangerous periods, Wang Liang had needed to simultaneously deal with 3 factions or more, and each faction wanted to kill him and take his place. Even the cook on his ship had carried such ambitions. Everyone was complaining and blaming him. Everyone believed that he was wrong and wanted to replace him and take over the rest of the fleet. There's something else that I need to tell you. The matter of the meteoric metal has already been exposed, Wang Liang suddenly said. What? Wang Chong's pupils constricted and his chopsticks stopped in midair. The meteoric metal was extremely important and could not be revealed to outsiders easily. Otherwise, those factions seeking out the meteorites would cross the ocean like a school of carp moving down a river. The meteoric metal was an existence comparable to the Hyderabad ore. Moreover, there weren't just 1 or 2 of these pieces of meteoric metal, but a vast quantity sitting outside on those islands across the sea. This sort of secret would be enough to tempt any of the great clans and trigger mad carnage on the ocean. The secret of the Hyderabad ore was already exposed, and it had been the Yao clan and King Qi that had found out. If even the meteoric metal were to be exposed not long after its discovery, it would be a massive blow to his cause. But there's no need for you to worry. I already helped you take care of it. Other than me, no one else in the fleet knows. Wang Liang said lightly, sipping his wine. Took care of it? Wang Chong was struck dumb. Ha ha. It is a very long journey from those islands to the mainland, Wang Liang casually said. Wang Chong felt like he could smell the thick scent of blood in Wang Liang's voice. He raised his head and began to carefully size up this former idler of his clan. Only then did he realize that Wang Liang didn't just have weather-beaten skin, but also a resolve and determination in his eyes that Wang Chong had never seen before. No, he had seen it. It was when the Wang clan had fallen and everyone had been rendered homeless. At their moment of greatest despair and dejection, that always weak cousin stepped forward and used that frail body of his to protect the entire clan. In those desperate straits, his cousin's face had exactly this sort of expression. No, even the cousin from back then did not compare to the one sitting in front of him now. Wang Chong truly found it difficult to imagine what sort of trials could hone his cousin to this state in only half a year, and he had no idea how many stories were hidden beneath that indifferent face. Unimaginable. Wang Chong sighed in his heart. His cousin had grown up. He had always wanted to help the people of his clan, help them mature and help them succeed. But he hadn't imagined that the first person to mature would be his older cousin, Wang Liang. The current Wang Liang was as steady as a rock, composed, persistent, decisive. He gave off an aura of trustworthiness and reliability. Although he was still not powerful in terms of martial arts, Wang Chong was well aware that his cousin's expertise had never been in that field. The current Wang Liang had reached the state that Wang Chong had envisioned and was truly able to hold his own. Perhaps, in the future, I can let him handle all of the clan's business. This thought flashing through Wang Chong's mind left him incredibly relieved. Although his cousin looked incredibly rough and not all like that young scion from before, this had been the price paid for maturity. Compared to the price that might have to be paid in the future, it was very small. I've truly troubled you this time. This restaurant belongs to our clan, and there's a bathroom here. I've already prepared a change of clothes for you after you've finished washing. Once you've finished eating, take a bath and rest up. Then once your mind has recovered, you should visit aunt and uncle. They've probably been waiting for you for a long time, Wang Chong suggested. Wang Liang nodded. I've been gone for so long, so I really should take a rest. And besides, it will be very difficult to get there without the monsoon winds. As for you, your goal this time will be even bigger, so you'll definitely attract the notice of some ambitious people. And once I clean up those evil-minded people in the fleet, those clans backing them definitely won't back down without any results. There are probably going to be endless probes from the various factions. Once the secret of the meteoric metal is exposed, people will rush toward those islands like a swarm of locusts. I think that this will be your primary concern. Wang Chong silently agreed. This was something that couldn't be avoided. The Wang clan had paid such an enormous price, spending 1,000,000 taels of gold, recruited so many people, and organized such a large fleet that was at sea for so long. It would be strange if this didn't attract any attention. There's no need to worry. I've already made plans, Wang Chong indifferently said. Whether it was the Wang clan, his big uncle, or the Zhang clan, they were all too obvious. So Wang Chong had never planned to put the meteoric metal in any of those places. Wang Chong had already decided that when the night came, he would begin transporting those meteorites to Deflecting Blade Manor. With a top-notch expert like Li Sai standing guard, these meteorites would be safe for now. The fleet had just returned, and the stir that it had created was too great. He would need to wait a while for the waves to settle and for prying eyes to look elsewhere. The matter of the meteoric metal would naturally fade from notice with it. When that time came, it wouldn't be too late to restart his plans. Since you've already made plans, I can relax. As for the members of my fleet, there's no need for you to worry. It's not like every one of them could remember the course of the voyage. Without my navigation map, even if they did have ambitions, they wouldn't be able to find that place. Moreover, the majority of them only know that we found a sort of massive stone on those islands, but they have no idea what those stones are for. Even if there are some people who went behind my back and investigated those stones, discovering that there was metal inside, they would never know that this was meteoric metal. In addition, in this period of time, I'll keep them in check. Wang Liang had a dignified air as he spoke. Wang Chong nodded and stood up, saying no more. His cousin's methods were already rather meticulous, so there was no need for any more input on his part. In the future, he would finally have another person in the Wang clan that he could talk business with. Cousin. Right when Wang Chong was ready to leave, a voice came from behind him. Wang Liang had put down his wine cup and chopsticks, and his eyes were fixed on Wang Chong, a strange look shining in them. That meteoric metal, what do you plan to do with it? And don't tell me that you plan to start a business. Wang Chong was frozen for a moment, and then he finally turned around. He looked at his cousin as if he was meeting him for the first time. He had done many things since his reincarnation, but everyone would just be surprised at his performance or praise his competence. His older cousin Wang Liang was the first to ask him what he wanted to do. This voyage had unquestionably matured him, allowed him to perceive many things. Ha! You'll find out in the future. Wang Chong chuckled and turned back around. Walking down the stairs and out the door, he swiftly vanished in the vast world of snow. Wang Liang watched in a daze, but a faint smile eventually crept onto his lips. At times, the lack of denial was admission, and the lack of an answer was an answer. Wang Liang had already managed to confirm some of his speculations from Wang Chong's words. His feeling had been on the mark. This younger cousin of his really was up to something. The Hyderabad, or the meteoric metal, though he had matured and gained a greater understanding of the human mind and nature, he was still utterly perplexed by this cousin of his. There were far too many puzzling things about him. But no matter what he did, desired, or schemed, there was one thing that Wang Liang could be sure of. Wang Chong had always been protecting his clan. He meant no evil for the clan. This was enough. Thus, no matter what he did, even if he planned to usurp the throne, Wang Liang would not try to stop him. The snow is really coming down. As he listened to the howling of the wind outside, Wang Liang took a pot of warmed wine to the window. Opening the window and looking out at the storm, he watched as a slender figure walked alone through the wind and snow, quickly vanishing. Time passed in a flash. Rumble. A slender figure was seated atop a snow-capped mountain. Thunder rolled and the world seemed to twist. The chaotic and monstrously terrifying energy of the world flooded unstoppably down onto the mountaintop. CRRSSSH. The piled snow, jolted by this energy, began to rustle down. And at this moment, Wang Chong heard a voice at his ear that he had not heard for a long time. Congratulations, user, for passing the third world constraint. You have consumed 40 points of destiny energy. You have 24 points of destiny energy remaining. Next world constraint, 9 months. Required destiny energy, 60 points. In addition, with each successful passage, users' gold organs and flood dragon bone will be strengthened. Strength will increase in direct proportion with number of successes. The third world constraint had finally been successfully passed. Streams of energy rushed out of the depths of time-space, flowing into Wang Chong's mind and body. In a short time, he felt that both his physical and mental strength had received a considerable boost. I finally passed through this world constraint, Wang Chong delightedly said to himself. The world constraint and its rejective power were like a time bomb. If one made a small mistake, people would die. It was only now that he had finally managed to overcome it. Getting up from the ground, Wang Chong began to warm up his body. Crack-clack. His body creaked and cracked as a powerful energy began to exude from within. This energy broke through the origin energy realm, climbing to the true martial realm Tier 1, Tier 2, and finally Tier 3. 20-some days of cultivation, the pills sent over by Six-Finger Zhang, and the repayment for passing through the third world constraint had finally allowed Wang Chong to reach Tier 3 of the true martial realm. With another 2 tiers, I'll be at true martial Tier 5. At that point, I can finally upgrade the halo of Dusk Stallion to the second layer. Wang Chong's eyes shone as he inwardly rejoiced. The strongest aspect of the halo of Dusk Stallion was not in the boost in strength it provided, but its strategic value on the battlefield. At the second layer of the halo of Dusk Stallion, as long as a soldier was standing in the effective radius of the halo, they would receive a constant buff that promoted them to Tier 2 of the true martial realm, upgrading their strength, speed, and dexterity to this level. This sort of comprehensive buff was almost absurd. As he slowly withdrew his energy, Wang Chong exhaled. His thoughts quickly reached out to the stone of destiny in his mind. The longer he spent in this world, the harsher the backlash from the world constraint became. Wang Chong had already gotten used to this. But when he had been resisting the power of the world constraint this time, Wang Chong had realized that the stone of destiny had suddenly changed a little. The time interval was extended to 9 months, but the destiny energy needed didn't scale proportionally. This means that in the future, the rejective power of the world will irregularly and rapidly increase. This also means that I will need more and more destiny energy. Wang Chong lowered his head, his eyes glimmering. Wang Chong had very quickly noticed another thing that had changed with the world constraint. Although 60 points of destiny energy was a lot, the 9 months of buffer was probably enough. What Wang Chong was more concerned about was the last point. Every time I successfully pass a world constraint, my gold organs and flood dragon bone will be strengthened, and they will be strengthened in direct proportion to the number of world constraints. This message had never appeared before. He didn't care much about other things, but the gold organs and flood dragon bone were both extremely important to Wang Chong. It was basically impossible to upgrade the former and arduously difficult to upgrade the latter. The flood dragon bone was a type of dragon bone, the lowest grade. When a warrior cultivated to this level, even the most talented would find getting any further incredibly difficult. When one had a root bone on the level of a dragon bone, the difficulty in upgrading it would increase by several times, even 10 sometimes with each level. Even Wang Chong, with the memories from 2 lives, didn't have any good methods of changing this. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been stopped at the Saint Martial realm in his last life without any further ability to improve. If he could improve his flood dragon bone just by safely passing the rejection and constraint of the world, this would undoubtedly be a surprising harvest. Perhaps I can use this to reach a level I never reached in my last life. At this moment, Wang Chong had to admit that he was tempted. There were challenges, but there were also rewards, and the greater the risk, the better the return. This seemed to be a hidden rule of this mysterious stone of destiny. Of course, if he failed, there was probably a harsh penalty waiting for him. Whoosh! His deep thoughts were suddenly disturbed by a flapping sound from overhead. Looking up, Wang Chong saw a snow-white falcon in the snowstorm, its wings tearing through the snow as it descended. It's Old Eagle. Wang Chong quickly extended an arm. Old Eagle assuredly knew that he was cultivating here and would never disturb him unless something important needed his attention. Receiving the snow falcon, he untied the letter from its leg. As soon as he saw its contents, his heart sank. He wants to go. I can't keep him. After giving a long sigh, Wang Chong leapt down from the mountain. Using the phantom steps, he transformed into a blur. As he rushed down the mountainside, he left only a few shallow footprints in his wake. As his martial arts improved, so did his phantom steps. Although he still hadn't reached a level where he could leave no footprints on the snow, casual observation made them seem like the tracks of a rabbit. Swoosh! After moving several dozen zhang, Wang Chong jumped onto a tree. As snow rustled down from the trees, Wang Chong made several flying leaps and quickly vanished into the distance. When Wang Chong returned to the mountain where Deflecting Blade Manor was located, the place was cloaked in brilliant snow and was absolutely silent. Other than the 20 guards, there was a tiny number of students. It was winter, so Deflecting Blade Manor was much more deserted than usual. Wang Chong passed through the main gate, and the sandalwood stairs creaked as he returning to his own building. With a glance, he was able to notice the 2-meter-tall figure standing by his door. That tall and sturdy figure was pacing back and forth, apparently having waited a long time with many worries on his mind. Only Li Sai could have such an imposing figure in Deflecting Blade Manor. The sheets of snow blanketed the hills, cloaking everything in white. The signs of winter were all around, but Wang Chong knew that in just a little while, spring would begin. Once the snow melted and trees began to bud, the annual troop assignments would begin. Li Sai wanted to go to the western regions and make a name for himself, so now was the best time. Only by preparing beforehand could one seize the best opportunity. It was obvious that Li Sai could wait no longer. From his sunken eyes, it was evident that he had not gotten much sleep lately. "Come in," Wang Chong said as he opened the door and went in. Although he was still extremely reluctant to let the invincible great general slip out of his hands and his heart still ached at the thought, Wang Chong had finally accepted this unpleasant fact. One can't keep someone who wants to go and can't beat away someone who wants to stay. Li Sai's personality clearly made it impossible for him to easily accept a master or allow himself to be controlled. He was not even willing to submit himself to a scion of a clan of ministers and generals. Wang Chong lightly pulled on a bell cord in the room, something he had learned from the other world. Someone quickly knocked on the door to deliver a pot of hot tea. Wang Chong first poured himself a cup before pouring one for Li Sai. "Sit." Wang Chong pointed to the seat across from him. Li Sai seemed to have a great deal on his mind. Though he took the tea, he didn't sit down. Wang Chong didn't much care. After sitting down, he opened one of the table's drawers and took out a letter he had prepared. He then threw the letter over to Li Sai. "I've already prepared everything. Take it." "Eh? What?" Li Sai froze for a moment, and then he seemed to come to his senses, like he had awakened from a deep dream. "The letter. Didn't you want to go to the western regions? I've already prepared things for you. The seals of my big uncle and King Song are also on there, as well as the official stamp of the Bureau of Military Personnel. If you take this to the Bureau of Military Personnel, you won't need to pass through the Biting Protectorate, but can go straight to the Anxi Protectorate to fulfill your dreams," Wang Chong explained. This time, it was his turn to be surprised. Li Sai's reaction had been completely out of his expectations. Wang Chong recalled that when they first met, Li Sai had been so angry that he wanted to dismantle Deflecting Blade Manor. Now that he had finally been granted his desire, shouldn't he be ecstatic? "Who said that I came to find you for this?" Li Sai looked down at the letter on the table, a strange look on his face. "Is that not it?" Wang Chong asked in surprise. "I didn't say anything about that." Li Sai finally regained his composure. "I came to find you because I have something I want to ask you." "Ask me." Wang Chong raised his head in surprise. As he looked at this bear of a man, Wang Chong suddenly realized that he seemed to have guessed wrong. "What do you want to ask me?" Wang Chong asked in astonishment. He was truly feeling strange. What question could be even more important than a letter to the Bureau of Military Personnel recommending that Li Sai be assigned to the Anxi Protectorate? And what was it that had him waiting at his door, pacing to and fro in worry, and even had him ask Old Eagle to send a snow falcon to tell him to come back? Li Sai suddenly stared at Wang Chong and harshly said, "I ask you, just what is your Wang clan up to?" His gaze was as sharp as a sword, and he was completely different from how he was just a moment ago. "What do you mean, what are we up to?" Wang Chong's face was the picture of surprise. He had been caught completely off guard by this question and was completely incapable of following Li Sai's train of thought. 1,000 June of Hyderabad ore and enough meteoric metal to forge several thousand suits of armor. And don't tell me that's just ordinary ore. And you also have thousands of secret martial arts manuals and also this Deflecting Blade Manor. What does your Wang clan plan to do with all these strategic resources? Ever since ancient times, attempts to usurp the throne by starting a rebellion have never ended well. At present, the world is at peace and the common people can rest easy. I, Li Sai, stand proud upon this earth, and never in my life would I do anything treasonous or take the side of the evildoer. If your Wang clan harbors ill motives and has thoughts of rebellion, the first thing Li Sai will do is kill you and then destroy the Wang clan." The veins on Li Sai's forehead were bulging and his eyes seemed ready to pop out. His furious appearance was like that of a terrifying guardian of the underworld. Wang Chong was struck dumb by these words. Wang Chong had never imagined that this was why Old Eagle had so urgently called him back and said that Li Sai wanted to see him. Li Sai had stayed in Deflecting Blade Manor for several months, so he had seen the Hyderabad or the meteoric metal and the martial arts manuals he had transcribed. He knew so many secrets, and this fellow actually thought that he wanted to start a rebellion. This future invincible great general of the Great Tang Empire had observed him for several months and actually thought that he was a traitor, that the Wang clan wanted to rebel. No matter how open Wang Chong's mind was, he could have never imagined that the concern weighing down this future general was this. Wang Chong was astonished and flabbergasted, not knowing whether to laugh or cry.